I think it's just important to provide those opportunities so that you can get to advocacy. That's where I was kind of getting to, is you really need to be able to be in a safe space and practice those other foundational skills before you can get to what advocacy looks like, and then explaining to people what advocacy is, what it looks like in a company, what it looks like for loved ones outside of a company, because a lot of the other things that I think company cultures are trying to change to now is like, oh yeah, this is just a fraction of your life, but a huge part of your day. You also have a significant life outside of this place.
Exactly.
So I think teaching that, but
yes,
understanding that a company is nothing without understanding the people who come to work every day.
Right.
I think is also important.
Hi, I'm Amber.
And I'm Elayna. We're glad you're here to join us where
everything is learning. Hi.
Hey.
What's going on?
Nothing.
Oh, man.
I was just looking at your cup and I was wondering what you got going on in your cup.
Oh, it's my usual latte with, I think it's like white chocolate, hazelnut, and a little bit of vanilla.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so bougie.
And it's just hug in a mug. I don't know what else to say. It's so cozy, comforting.
I'm having country peach tea.
Oh, nice. I didn't even see your mug. Nice.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a little with the holiday.
Cute.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, man. I say this a lot, but I feel like every time we talk, I have to tell you what I catch you up on what I thought about over the last week or whatever. Because I'm always like, so I've been thinking. But I guess that's what learning is supposed to make you do, right? The more you learn and then talk, share in community and learn from each other, and then you ponder on that and you come back together and share more. That's just a learning cycle,
think,
right?
reflect, share, care.
Yeah. Okay, it makes sense. Okay, cool.
Sounds like a
makes me feel better.
Slogan.
Da, 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 da. Okay. Anyway, I've been thinking about our journey of conversations. I feel like it has been a journey. Thanks for following along on this fun ride.
Yeah, we're having fun.
I'm having a blast. We started, with the idea that all brains are created differently, right? But at the same time, all brains deserve the same level. They're all deserving of the same level of respect, support, and care, right?
Yeah.
They're all different, but they all have the same value. They all deserve the same attention.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think, obviously we're not fully there as a society, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
We made strides.
We've made strides for sure.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is it means that we have to to get to that point fully, right? We have to unlearn a lot of what we've been taught, whether that was taught consciously, unconsciously, subconsciously, any kind of consciously related, pick a prefix in front of it. I don't know. And then unlearn that and then be flexible with how we approach learning as a whole.
Yeah.
And that it's so much more than a classroom. It's so much more than a test. It's so much more than a lesson or the science fair. Or that volcano with the baking soda and vinegar. So much more than all that. Those are pieces, right?
Yeah.
And I agree. We are getting better. I totally agree. And I think. I mean, even just perusing social media, and now this might just be my algorithm, but there are so many people talking about how their brains work differently and what they need and how they contribute to society still and how they still, you know what I mean? Yes, my brain works differently, but right, that doesn't mean anything other than it works differently. Yeah. I have to find some different ways to go about things than you do, maybe, but I still am a valuable human being, right?
Right.
I think the more people share their experiences, the more we keep fighting for that equal support, respect, care, then we're going to make change. And hopefully we can change the whole topic of this podcast at some point later. You know what I mean? What if we did such a great job helping people understand all of this? That at
what
some
if
point
we transformed the world?
Then we would have to move on to world peace.
Mars. Oh, world peace.
or just go to Mars. Whatever. 2 different approaches. That's fine. I love that. Flexible thinking at its finest right there. 2 different ways to go.
No, here's the thing. I feel like everything you just said was so powerful, and I love our conversations because I grow from hearing you talk about things and hearing your
Same.
stories, and it's really interesting because we talk about how we're really similar in a lot of ways, but we're mostly different. And my approach,
It's a
you talked
hallmark of
about,
a good relationship, I think. You know
yeah,
what I
for
mean?
sure, and that we celebrate that in each other for sure.
100% exactly.
And I think it's really interesting to me that you talked about when you were thinking about the last conversation, about flexible thinking and communication and creativity and how that all ties into advocacy, which we're going to talk about today. I
Yeah, for
just
sure.
kept thinking about the same kind of things about society. Have we really improved? And I kept thinking about how important those three are to being a successful, I would call successful advocate, intentional advocate.
Mm.
And I do also think that it's really hard. When I was reflecting on like, what is it about advocacy on my learning journey that was so important? I think that advocating for myself to myself was the hardest thing to do in
Oh my
learning
gosh.
advocacy
Yes. Yeah.
because it requires so much. And then I thought about society.
Yeah.
And I really feel for adults who haven't been taught
Right.
advocacy. And
Or that they're allowed to advocate and that or that they
right,
should be and that there's, that it's okay to and that all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, that starts with the fact that it's hard to advocate to ourselves for ourselves. We have to go back to the beginning, right? And we have to understand my brain is different. I need different things. I'm still fully capable of reaching the end goal.
right,
Just got to get there a different way.
right.
And
And
that's okay. That's great.
I really, I think the thing is that, our frame of reference, because of our backgrounds, we think a lot of young learners.
Right.
And
Right.
we help older learners,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
they're parents or adults with ADHD or, different kinds of needs, executive functioning, or
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
Whatever it might be. Right.
Um, or even people who just need a little extra help with, you know, figuring out a schedule or
Right.
how to manage their money or whatever it
Right.
is.
Right.
But I think the thing that I keep going back to is if a lot of those people had the support when they were younger, or if advocacy was constantly practiced as our flexible thinking, communication, and creativity,
Right.
it wouldn't be such a hard concept. And you and I have shared our hopes and dreams and aspirations, which sometimes change weekly. But our
Sometimes.
our long-term goals, I think, have been really similar and kind of stayed and tested, you know the force of time or whatever it is, the course of time. But
Right.
I think
The, the course of
I've
life.
I think one of the things that that I've talked about in the past, and you and I have even talked about, opening a company together and stuff. I often think about, the onboarding process of companies. And I think that when you were talking about society, in particular, when you were reflecting,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that a lot of the things that I do in my sessions with learners and parents, it just occurred to me like how important I believe flexible thinking and communication and creativity and advocacy are for me
Yeah.
in my day to
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about a hypothetical company and onboarding week and
Fun.
these
Fun.
skills. And I just thought, if only companies out there, before
Yeah.
someone was fully hired in this hypothetical company, I would want to know if they're able to be flexible thinkers. Like, I would want to put them in hypothetical situations
Yes.
so they can learn and find success and grow. And I'd want to get to know them better and how their brain works to ensure that they understand flexible
Yes.
thinking is a huge part of company culture.
Right. I'm over
So I was
here
like,
laughing, not at the idea at all, but as you're talking and sharing this, I'm like 100% in. And then I was thinking about that would be the best job interview ever. Like the questions you could pose would be
yeah.
so bananas. And then to watch somebody be like, have a flexible
Um,
response would be kind of a fun thing.
it would
It'd be
be.
kind of
But
fun.
I think that's the thing is like, you know, I just
I love
Can you
that.
imagine a full day of getting people who don't know each other, who are going to add to a company culture and add to successes and learn challenges and how to cope and things like that? Spending a whole day on practicing flexible thinking and seeing if it aligns with company culture, how
Yeah,
important that would be. So then I was like, gosh, flexible thinking, that
100%.
I could map out an entire thing for a company that would encourage even current people,
Yes.
coworkers, etc.,
Yes.
colleagues, but particularly people who were new who could like restart and continue to reinvigorate. But then I was like, you know what?
What?
What
Do
about
tell.
communication?
We need it.
Like,
I mean, at its core, advocacy requires that, right?
think about how many places out there who provide a service
Yeah.
and like no one explains to them and I mean not enough, not a
Right.
whole day's worth of communication, what it looks like colleague to colleague, person to customer, person to HR, person to self,
Right.
like the expectations of communications, how to communicate with others face to face, how to
Right.
communicate in a remote meeting, how to personalize communication within your work life, how to communicate with empowerment and respect, how to communicate via email or text through technology.
Right.
Like, people don't know how to do that and nobody's really taught. So just sit
Yes.
down. It's crazy. Or even, you know what's really important today? How to
Yeah.
communicate with people of various gender identities that you work
Yes.
with and
Yeah.
customers that you'd work with.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. Like, even like I need more practice with that in truth. Like, I
Right.
think
Right.
everybody probably does.
Right.
But then I was like, okay, cool. Like, now people flexible thinking and now communication, and okay, now we're going to go into the fun day. The day that we work on creativity in the workplace and the importance of being comfortable with your flexible thinking and communication so that people can really like thrive and feel safe to be creative and explore and break down like societal boxes and constructs.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important to provide those opportunities so that you can get to advocacy. That's where I was
Right.
kind of getting to, is
Right.
you really need to be able to be in a safe space and
Yeah.
practice those other foundational skills before you can get to what advocacy looks like. And
Yeah.
then explaining to people what advocacy is, what it looks like in a company, what it looks like for loved ones outside of
Right.
a company, because a lot of the other things that I think company cultures are trying to change to now is like, oh yeah, this is just a fraction of your life, but a huge part of your day. You
Yeah.
also have a significant life outside of this place. So I think
Exactly.
teaching that, but
Yes.
understanding that a company is nothing without understanding the people who come to work every day,
Right.
I think is
Right.
also important.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it too. I was like, how do you keep that going after you on board or do this kind of development? And
Yeah.
I thought about like, can you imagine if you called meetings, like you had a weekly scheduled meeting
Mhm.
and you called it an advocacy meeting with your coworkers? So you had one
Mhm.
with your coworkers, you had one with your, I don't know, administrator or leader or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can teach the difference between advocating and like negative B sessions. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Like, there is a difference, and I think sometimes that is also a barrier with
Yeah.
advocacy. But I went down like 55 bunny trails. So,
No, I
anyway.
agree. I mean, that's kind of why like everything we've talked about so far really does lead up to this point. Like you have to understand a lot of those ideas, be practicing a lot of those ideas, and starting with like, who you are and accepting what you need and being okay with that. Because then you have to
Right.
go and because advocacy is making your needs known to somebody else. And that,
Mm,
like you're the onus is on you to request it, right? But it is a request on one hand. Let me although wait. It's kind of like there, well, how do I say that? It's a request, but it's not. It's more than a request. Cuz like you can advocate and people will may not hear you still,
yeah, that's something I was, yeah, when
right?
I was
So,
thinking
but
about
I
it.
think at its core though, advocacy is you are making your needs known to somebody else
Yeah, I think that's a
who can
great,
play a role in helping you, meet those needs, basically.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other
And
piece,
that's the
right?
part
Like,
that I meant is like the request part, right? Because you have to bring someone
yeah.
else there that you're kind of saying, here's what I need, and I need you to play a part in that, right?
Yeah. No, for sure.
Because
I think the
I think
hard
that would be the difference to me between like strategies and advocacy. Strategy is well, it could be. No, that's not a difference.
I feel like the strategy is
There's
the
some
answer
strategies
to
you can implement
advocating.
yourself,
I feel like you
but you do need to
advocate and
present.
then
Okay,
you
yeah.
implement
No,
strategies.
it's still part of it for sure.
No,
Yeah,
but it
okay.
definitely is. I think
They're
the hard
related for
part
sure.
about coming up with a working definition for advocacy in my
Yeah,
mind was it has to reach all ages. It
right.
has to be able to go and flow with different stages of where a learner is developmentally, what's developmentally appropriate for advocacy,
Yes.
and what advocacy the purpose of advocacy is what it could do for your life.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that that's another piece that a lot of people sometimes get confused with, but we've also
Mm,
talked there's so many different kinds of advocacy too. So,
right.
I don't know, the working definition I was thinking about was I think advocacy is choosing to transparently, which includes vulnerability,
Right.
transparently and thoughtfully communicate your needs or the needs of another.
Right.
And it includes a problem, a plan, strategies, or a goal to meet or exceed.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah,
I
you know
only
I'm a big fan
got
of at its
there.
core definitions and then I expand from it. But yeah, exactly. It's
But the
like
reason that I got there is because I felt like there are advocates that have stood the test of time, right? There
right.
are advocate when I think of advocates, honestly, the first one that always comes to my mind, and it might be the time I spent in Atlanta, but it also is just he's an icon, is Martin Luther King Jr. I think
Right.
of him as an advocate.
Yeah,
I also think of Malcolm X as an advocate.
for sure. For sure.
But the
Advocating for change.
right, and I
Right.
think the thing is that people go about advocacy a
They were
different
like
ways.
advocate plus.
Yes, they
You know what I mean?
yes.
But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that for sure. I see what you're
But
saying.
I also think about my mother being an advocate. I think
Yeah.
about my sister being an advocate. I think about myself in our work, your and my work in
Right.
advocacy and advocating for people.
Right.
Um, but I think it the piece that I never understood before
Mm.
is that it has to be transparent and has to be thoughtfully communicated.
Yeah. And I
Like
think
popping off is not going to work for anyone to get
it
anywhere
is
where they want to go.
advocating. It
It
is
is advocating.
advocating. But yeah. So I was looking at it too. I was thinking about like you're saying because advocating is something that is a lifelong skill, right? Something that we have done. I mean, even crying as an infant, you could say is like an advocating, communicating kind of a thing.
Mm,
Um but so I kind of came up with this idea that there's two kinds of ways or two at its core. I love the phrase at its core apparently today. To me, I was like there are two types of advocacy. There's like a formal advocating and an informal advocating. Formal
okay.
being like you're going into an institution to make some kind of a request for accommodations. Maybe it's like work, school, and maybe it's not even accommodations. Maybe it's like, you want to advocate for yourself to get a raise, right?
Yeah, your
Like
job.
that
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be advocating formally because you have to set up a meeting and you're going to present your data, blah, 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 right? It's like a
Sure.
thing. Then there's also informal advocating. We're like in our casual relationships, right? Like, I mean, how many times do we text each other and like, hey, are you free to meet today? And you have to, we can advocate for ourselves and say, no, I've got this going on. I'm not in the right mind frame or,
Yeah.
whatever's going on. Like, even though that is still advocating for yourself or saying, hey, I can't in this way. Can we do it that way? Whatever the case may be, you
But
can
what you're getting
advocate
to
formally
is
or
that
informally, but it's all
yeah,
advocating.
I love that because what you're also getting to, I don't know if you even heard yourself say it, but you were talking about flexible thinking, communication, and
Right.
creativity.
Exactly.
That's what you were saying when you said advocate in those
I mean, because in order to advocate, first off, you have to communicate, right?
right.
And you have to communicate and be flexible in your thinking so you can create a flexible approach to like the solution to this situation, right? So what you're advocating for could be a flexible, creative solution.
Right.
And it all looks different, but it is all advocating
I think you're
in these
also
different
hinting
ways.
to personalization, right? Advocacy
It's all
is
in that.
pretty much all
Everything
personalized, right?
and see, like, that's why, like, every conversation we've had so far, we've had we've had so many tied-ins from every other conversation because all of these ideas go together.
Yeah, and
Like, they're
it's
nothing as a standalone
foundational
thing. We have to have all of this. Yeah. Oh, right. That's
right.
why we called it foundations. Good call. Good call.
I do you also hinted to something else that I think I'm curious what you think about this.
Okay.
Um, you were talking about young children, um, like crying or expressing
Mm.
themselves. I think advocacy is innate, right? Do
I
you?
think there's a part of it. Yeah. I mean, because like we said, a baby has a need that they cannot meet in their current state based on their limited skills and things, but they are communicating that need to another person so that
Yeah.
that person can intervene and get the end goal met, whatever that end goal, right? So I think that's the part
Yeah.
too of advocating is that you're sharing a request with a possible solution
Mhm.
in hopes that as a way to reach the desired end goal. You
Yes.
know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. No, I
It's
completely
not
agree.
like we're not advocating because we want to make life easier. We're not advocating because that's too hard. I don't feel like whatever the case may be. But no, it's really to make an even playing field so that everyone is able to reach the desired end goal with what they bring to the table.
Mm.
And even ideally, maybe in a way that like lets them shine the most. Lets you best use
Oh, for
how they're
sure.
made or whatever.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I completely agree with
It makes
all
me
of
think
that.
of there's this image, and I think we've both used it before in different contexts, but it's an image of three kids standing at a fence. Right. On the other
Yeah.
side of the fence is a
Yep.
baseball game, right? And these three
Yeah.
kids, they want to watch this baseball game, but they are three different heights. And
Right.
so, if we treated them equally, they would all get the same equal stool, the same height stool. That would be equality, right? So everyone's just got the same stuff.
Right.
But they're at different heights. They have different things working for them, working against them, whatever, however you want to say that. And they all bring different things to the table. And so through advocating, we can get the appropriate height stool for each person. So each of them now can have the desired end goal, reach the desired end goal of seeing the game.
Right.
So it's about just it's not making an excuse for yourself or anybody else. It's definitely not that. So if anyone ever says, "Oh, you're just trying to get a cop out," or no, we're leveling the playing field. That's
Right.
it. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I wish that I wish that advocacy was something that we constantly went back to in practice because I think that's the only way you can really
Right.
identify, but I like success and feel
Right.
successful after you identify what success means to you. But I think sometimes the reason that people don't advocate is because they've seen examples out there of extreme or very powerful, making these huge changes and huge differences. So it feels kind of daunting and they don't know where to
Mm,
start. I know for me,
interesting.
advocating really started because I felt unheard. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, being a child, it was one of those things where if I wanted to be heard, I really had to advocate, but it was really important to be intentional about how
Right.
you advocated so that you were
Right.
heard
Right.
because as much as it's personalized for me as the learner, it is also you were talking about formal, informal. It's also about the person you're communicating to.
Right.
And I
Right.
guess if there was a how to, like if it was like an addition problem,
Mm.
where where would you start?
So that's funny because I actually had a different thought about how for some people why advocating might be hard.
Oh,
And
oh, yeah.
but I did go back to your original thought. It was kind of like similar to that of how like I think the first place you have to advocate to is to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like you said initially, I think that can be a hard step for people. And I think depending on how you're raised, advocating is seen sometimes as talking back. It's seen
Right.
as making an excuse because you're lazy, or it has some negative connotation to it. You've received some kind of negative feedback from trying to advocate for yourself in the past.
Right.
I think it's like you said earlier, it's innate and like curiosity and that instinctual zest for learning, for just to learn. for the value of learning. Those things society can, not always, but it can kind of take out of us, beat out of us through different events.
Yes.
I was thinking like I needed to know that I had permission. I did that actually no, that I didn't need permission to advocate for myself, but
Yeah.
that if someone needs permission, I'm giving it to you right now.
Right.
That you are allowed to advocate. You should advocate. It's your right and your need to advocate for yourself or for others. That's kind of where I thought that was step one for
Yeah.
me anyway, which is kind of like, you have the right to do this. You should be doing this. You can be doing
I love
this.
that.
All of that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of went like first you have to identify what's wrong and then you have to
Yeah. In
identify what
terms
you
of
need
in terms of a
in order to
formula,
figure
that's
out your goal.
right.
That's
And
kind of where I
that in
started.
any type of advocating, whether it's to yourself, to a friend, or to your boss, right? I agree. Like
Sure.
those are the steps. I think you need to start with the problem, lay out your
Yeah.
current or lay out the current level of performing. What's it like now? What is working? What's not working?
Right.
Those kind of things. And
Yeah.
why? Go into the whys of it, right?
I think
And then
determining who to communicate your need to is
oh,
also a tricky
that's a
step.
good point for sure.
Like, is it yourself? Is it
Yes.
your boss? Is it your leader? Is it a doctor? Is it a
Right.
parent,
Right.
learning mentor? And then
All
deciding
of the
how to
above.
communicate to that person and
Yes.
what
Yeah.
it tells you what to advocate by adding those two steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think once you have what you want to advocate and your goal, that's
Yeah.
really what advocacy is. It's like
Yeah.
your what or your why, and
Mhm.
then how
What's
you
the
can get to your goal. Yeah.
yeah, like all three of those, right? The what, the why. Why do I need why is this a need? Why am I talking about this? What is a way that we can overcome this challenge or obstacle? What's the creative or flexible approach we can put in here? And
Yeah.
then what is the impact, if any, on the outcome, the desired outcome? Because it
Right.
could be that, like, the goal would be maybe that it would have no negative impact on the outcome. But there's
Sure.
a chance that by advocating, we're going to exceed the desired outcome, that it's going to be better than
Yes.
what we originally thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like
I I did.
that's interesting too.
Yeah, no, I think that's that was part of where I was. It's just interesting that we keep kind of going to the same place, but we're taking different routes, which I love. But
I mean, that tracks. That's par for the course.
um, the whole like you were kind of talking about, you can have an even better outcome, or it could
Mm,
be more challenging, or it's like what can I advocate for, and how do I know if I'm doing it right? I feel like are the
mm,
two biggest questions I get from families or from kids, and
yeah,
my response is always like advocate for everything. Like if your Starbucks order is wrong, tell the barista. If your parent isn't meeting you where you're at, tell them what you need. You
that's
know,
too funny.
if if like you're feeling lonely or you need support, reach out to us or a
Right,
doctor or
somebody or
someone who
whatever. Right.
understands. I mean, it's advocate for everything. And I think the only thing it could possibly do is make you feel better long term.
Right.
I
Right.
really believe that. I think that it's hard sometimes. I think it can be very frustrating. It can be triggering. I really like
Yeah,
I just think that it takes practice.
for
And
sure.
you always learn something from advocating. You
Right.
know, I I think some of the biggest lessons I've learned from advocating are like about the person I spoke to.
Yeah.
Like, is this someone I can trust in the future? If I didn't get what I want, can I still reach my goal?
Right.
Um, like how did my thinking change?
Mm,
Um, did I make any new connections, and what
right.
are some next steps? But never stop advocating for yourself or others, because it I think it can only really lead to good
Right.
if the intent is to be better or
Right.
do better or get
Right.
something that you actually genuinely need to get you to a better place.
Right.
I do think that's the purpose of advocacy. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think
Yeah,
about
I'm with you on that. I think, and like I said, I think within knowing that advocacy is our, we have the goal, there's a goal in mind with it to reach an end goal that's been set out. You know what I mean? Um, and it's not just, I think a lot of people who are against these words that we use, advocacy and, flexible thinking and celebrating uniqueness, right? All that kind of stuff. A lot of people see advocacy and have that like negative mindset of, oh, it's just you whining and complaining or whatever the case may be. But like, sometimes we have to,
Yeah.
right? Like the world is made, I say it a lot, but I like there are so many ways that society is the what round hole that we're trying to put the square peg into or whatever the case may be. I think I mix it every time I say it, but we have to find ways to make it work for everybody. And it can. Like the world is, everyone belongs here. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's just a matter of like if we all just have the empathy to meet each other where we are and see that, yeah, okay, we all have different needs. Cool. I'm willing to be flexible and listen to you advocate for yourself in order to meet that end goal that we all have the same, that whatever. There's so many negative connotations that can be seen around advocacy. And at the end of the day, it's just getting your needs met, whatever they are. You have the permission to do it. You need to do it for yourself. And yeah, I mean, you can advocate for any and everything. And the where people start might be different for each of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I personally might not start with the person bringing me my food because I don't want them to spit in it, you know? But I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Um, that's a big joke at my house. We never send food back.
See, at my house, my
There are things we will
my
advocate for and things that we won't. Things that we're willing to tolerate for certain reasons. But like,
man,
yeah,
I
I
had
mean,
some really powerfully vocal um advocates in my youth, which had a lot to do with my personality. And I
that's
think
funny.
that also it's really interesting the impact, because I you've talked a lot about you know your, like, not your upbringing but people's upbringing and the impact, and we
Yeah,
both agree wholeheartedly that a lot of things start in the home,
right,
or
right,
with whoever is the greatest voice in your life at a young age.
right.
And I think part of advocating is also understanding the diversity of advocating
Yeah,
and the different types. And I do think in presenting advocacy, the formal and informal is really helpful. Um, sometimes I think younger learners just need somebody to hear them.
yeah.
I do think a lot
Younger
of adults
learners,
need that
we
too.
all need it. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
my whole thing on I don't even know what to call it, universal mental health free care for everyone or
right.
whatever. But yeah, just I think understanding that the foundation of what advocacy is, the fact that you need those skills prior to in order to be an effective advocate.
Yeah,
I just keep going back to how important it is to practice, and part of that
right.
goes back to community, which we talk about a lot,
Yep,
and
yep.
having those people to represent what advocacy can look like, what it
And a
can look
safe
like
place to practice
positively, what
it.
it can look
Right.
like negatively, what it
Yeah.
can, and it again, it goes back to personalization. Advocacy is at its core really personalized,
Yeah,
you
because I mean,
know?
you are advocating for what you or someone else specifically needs in a certain situation or whatever, and that's all personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the other questions you said that, people ask you a lot is about like how do you know if you're doing it right? And at first instinct, I was like, "Oh, well, if you're getting your needs met through advocacy, then you're doing it right." And then I was like, but we're not there yet as a society. So ideally,
No, yeah.
yes, right? But like unfortunately there are going to be times when we advocate for what we truly need and nothing changes, right?
Right.
There isn't you're told no, whatever the case may be. The right way to know if you're doing it right is to know that you're doing it right. Like you said, I definitely agree with
Yeah.
that. I don't, you're just doing it. um I mean, I think that, like you're kind of hinting at too, and like what you're saying is that there are ways to approach advocating in different format, different contexts or whatever. So you're more likely to be heard and that the change is more likely to happen. You know what I mean? What's that old
Right.
phrase of like, you catch more flies with honey
With
than vinegar or
honey.
whatever?
Yeah.
I'm not saying suck up to
Then you
people,
did.
but I'm saying like, the approach is important
Yeah,
depending for
I
sure.
mean,
But start somewhere. So
sure.
don't worry about the approach. Worry with starting and then hone the approach as you go. But just
Oh,
start
yeah.
and go from there. But an important part of knowing that you can do all the things right when you advocate and it might still not be
Still
heard.
go wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it still not might not be acknowledged. And I think that's another chance for flexible thinking and creativity and problem solving, because there are times that you're like, okay, well then let me just muscle on and figure this out. Let me, is there another strategy I can use, another way I can meet that end goal and still get my needs met? Sometimes it's a complete change. Sometimes it's like that's the sign you needed, that like the actual advocating for yourself is leaving that situation. Like that is still
Yes.
advocating for yourself, is leaving a situation.
I 100%. And sometimes in the takeaway from that kind of situation too that you're talking about is understanding that that person is never going to hear you, but also
Right.
understanding that that has literally nothing to do with you.
You
And not
still
you don't have
matter.
to hold on to it to prevent you from moving forward.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it is really interesting. I don't know if I told you this. I was at the doctor's office the other day. Did I tell
Yeah.
you about the mom who was
I don't
really
think so.
upset?
Uh-uh.
So she was newer to the doctor's office, so she didn't know any of my background at all or anything. And it turned out she was a single mother of 3 boys.
Okay.
And she was really upset. I could tell she was
Mm.
upset. I asked her, if she was okay, and
Yeah.
she had just come from a meeting. Her youngest is autistic,
Okay.
and she couldn't get the support and resources that she needed.
Ugh.
And
How
she
many times have we heard
thought,
that story?
I know,
It's
and
heartbreaking.
it kills me because
In the year of our Lord
she
2024, it's ridiculous, but carry on.
but
It's so frustrating.
the part that really got to me was
Heartbreaking.
I wasn't in the meeting. I don't know what happened, but
Right.
I do know how it impacted this mother,
Right.
and it broke me.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
listened and I sat there and um
Mm.
you know, I just I asked her if she wanted any suggestions about how to get what she needed, because you don't know what you don't know sometimes in
Right.
advocating too.
Right. Especially in those formal settings. Because there
Right.
can
And
be
it's
rigmarole and
intimidating.
red tape and all these fancy words and fancy people and
Right. And the fact,
meetings, and you can't
yeah.
wear sweatpants. Ugh. All the
Or it's
horrible
frowned
things.
upon or whatever, but
True.
it's just it was just heartbreaking. So I offered her my email and I told her
For
if she ever
sure.
needed anything, reach out to me
Yeah.
and I'd be happy, like no charge, like just,
Yeah.
if she needed an advocate the
For
next time.
sure.
And I was like, you don't ever have to use it. Even if you just want a contact event. She never reached out, but the point that I'm kind of getting to is like sometimes people don't know how to advocate for something too because they don't know what to do
Yes.
or they don't know how to do it. And
Yeah.
then kind of what you're talking about, I think a lot of perseverance and grit comes into this too, is
Yeah.
not every situation is going to go like Grace and
Right.
Frankie when they have
Right.
arthritis and they
Oh.
make a vibrator for older women, like, or they make the rise up toilet. I'm sorry, I'm watching reruns and I just can't get enough. Like,
I'm
they're like
dead. I love it.
women who are older with arthritis need vibrators.
There you
Like,
go.
and
The
then it just
end.
works out for
That
them.
is peak advocacy. Self-advocacy. Oh
But
God.
it's just
I did not mean that. I'm sorry. Oh God.
uh,
Oh God. I can't recover from my
um,
own joke. Oh God. Oh God. I'm dead.
it's not to say
I think a
dust
piece of
yourself
my
off.
soul
You
just left
did.
my body. Anyway, sorry to interrupt your story. It was a very profound point too.
Oh, I love you.
Whew. That was too much. Yeah. Yeah. Where do we go from here?
I don't think we can go anywhere.
I will say this.
Okay, you go, because I don't have it.
I like like Frankie and Grace,
Grace
Grace
and
and
Frankie.
Frankie.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Wow, I could not get that right at all. Okay, I did. Okay. I one thing that they definitely taught us is that you keep advocating for yourself and you
Oh
keep
yeah, they never
whatever.
gave
Like,
up.
no, yeah, and they, it was never like pity party or excuse. It was just like, here's what I need, and either you make it happen or I'll make it happen. Right, one of the two things.
Yeah, they
And
picked
I
each other
think,
up.
yeah, you were saying earlier one of the things about like, how do we continue to work on it? And I think, like you said, practice, right? Like you just keep doing it. Even
Yeah,
when you are shut down, when you're told no, you pivot. Like they pivoted, you know?
yeah,
You find a new way, you look for change, you get help and support. Maybe, I mean, you consult the wise Googles and see if you can find, if you need a formal advocate in your area, look and see if there's some available. Like there are resources out there. Again, this is the year of our Lord 2024. And so while advocacy might still be a hard thing, we at least have more resources to help us out in a lot of these situations. You know what I mean?
yeah. I
And
love
use
that you
formal
say
ones.
that. One thing, just a shout out to parents who maybe have to take their kids ever
Let's
into
just
the
shout out
hospital.
parents, period.
Yeah, shout out parents.
Salute you.
Or guardians,
Yes.
people who
Yeah.
choose
Yeah.
children.
Adults who, yeah.
Yeah,
Adults raising
positive
kids, we
adults.
salute you.
Yeah, we do salute you. Um, One thing that I didn't know until I got into public schools was
Mm.
that there are advocates
Yep.
in hospitals.
Yep.
Um, and that was a really interesting thing I did one time for um, a student of mine a long, long, long time ago. Was go in. The parents had asked me to advocate because the child needed support, and I was not at all a health advocate. But then I realized going into the situation that there were health advocates.
Yeah.
I have family members who have used the health advocates in the child, particularly in children's hospitals. There are
Right.
advocates, but there
Right.
are also advocates, for adults too in
Yep.
hospitals. So
Yep.
resources. I'm so glad that you brought up resources because there are millions. There are
There's so many
hundreds of
things.
thousands of books on advocating,
Yeah. And if you don't know where to
podcasts.
start, like I said, Google could be your best
Yeah,
friend. Start there
or
and
ask us.
whatever. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
anything, anybody like that you could think of that could help you out in the journey or point you in a new direction. You need community. And sometimes
right.
that community can be virtual. Sometimes that
Hmm.
community can be in person, whatever it is, but find a community and you keep working for change. Take care of yourself though, right? In the midst of all this,
Yes.
advocating for yourself
Please
and what
take
you
care of
need,
yourself.
make sure
Yeah.
you're resting, all that kind of stuff. That's what we keep doing.
Yep.
And then, hopefully one day, like I said, we won't even have to talk about this anymore because it'll be innate. That's my ideal world. Just like everyone just accepts everyone for who they are, what they bring to the table, what they need.
Yeah.
And we can actually accomplish so much that way, I think. So,
I think that's
yeah.
they're the community that I hope we're creating with this
Right.
podcast.
Right. Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
that's
I mean, that's
really,
why
I
we're
think
doing
our
what we're doing.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
really our ultimate aspiration is
Hmm.
being advocates. I mean, the only reason that we're able to do what we do is because we've learned and we continue to learn.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of
Yeah.
growth. It's a lot of
Yep.
vulnerability. But
Takes a lot
you
of
know,
prerequisite things like, the
yeah,
self-acceptance and exploring yourself and being creative and flexible, finding what works, finding what doesn't work. Um, and then, yeah, like you said, advocating to yourself and then stepping up and advocating to others, for others. Yeah, I agree. It's so important.
I think it's a huge piece of our final episode
of the season. Not final ever, though. God, that got dark.
No, for this season.
For the season.
But it's advocacy is just this piece of
I mean, 'cause,
ownership and learning.
Right. And we just, it's all about just owning your journey, right? Like all this is putting all these foundational pieces together. Well, like it's all culminates in just owning it all and driving the ship and then seeing where it goes. So yeah, that sounds like a good conversation for next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Me too.
Yeah,
It'll be fun times.
Excited.
Thanks for listening to Everything is Learning.
We'll catch you next time.